Welcome to the Finding Free Thought podcast.
This podcast is funded by you. To support our work, please consider making a purchase from our Free Thought shop. Check out my campsite at campsite.bio/goodresonance, where you can follow me on social media, make a donation, subscribe to my newsletter, check out my essential oils offerings, and grab my restorative teas ebook. Please subscribe to the audio version of this podcast on Apple and Podbean and the video version on YouTube and Rumble.
Be sure to check out my 6-episode sci-fi comedy series, Simon Esler's Dystopian Imaginarium, along with my 60-minute comedy special, Theorize About Conspiracies, and my 3-season hit show, Worlds Within, all on Rise TV. And don't forget to hit up simonesler.com for all of my work, to join my newsletter, for links to purchase my NFTs, make donations, and follow me on all social media. You can also join my locals community, Team Free Thought, at teamfreethought.locals.com, where I'll be offering subscribers previews of new sketch comedy material, documentary work, and private broadcasts for supporters only. As a member of Team Free Thought, $5 a month gets you all of that plus a 15% discount at the Free Thought shop. Welcome to the Finding Free Thought podcast. Today we are going to tackle the New Age concept of manifestation, and we're going to compare it to some of the things we've discovered in human design that frankly kind of undermine and debunk and just shift the whole concept of manifestation. And really what it comes down to is the idea that the old way of looking at manifestation was kind of seven-centered. It was about a 7-chakra system, and human design shifts it into a more complex, more nuanced view. So, Amanda, let's do it. Let's jump into this idea, because we've seen even people who know about human design still sticking with this old manifestation concept. I think it's a tricky thing to grab hold of, because a lot of people were super empowered when that information came out, when it was like, you can just manifest your life, you can attract things to yourself, you are the creator of your own reality. A lot of it was reinforced by some of the quantum physics info that came out. Right? This idea that the observer collapses the wave function of the particle, that particles go from wave state to particle state because the observer collapsed it with their observations. And that, I guess what happened is that people tied that to the concept of manifestation in a New Age idea, and it was like, you're constantly creating your reality by observing it from the proper vibrational state.
Yes, well, to me, too, it's very mind-based. It has almost no honor towards the physical body in any way.
Well, to be devil's advocate, I would say some people say you have to get your body into the feeling of what you want. You have to go into the feeling of receiving that paycheck or getting that house, and like what you're going to feel like. And they say that if you can get your body to vibrate in the way that you're going to feel when you receive it, then you're pulling it to yourself.
But then my question to those people would be, where is it originating? If you're having to bring your body along, it's not originating in the body.
So you're
it's originating in your mind.
Yes. It's the mind,
and you're dragging your body along. So that's my question, because I've experienced this issue myself. I've been dragging my body along, dragging it through terrifying, horrible things because of my idea of manifestation. And then wondering what's wrong because it's not working.
Right. Because a lot of people have had that experience where it just doesn't work. They get all this New Age, they get these New Age formulas, they try it out, and it flops, and they can leave people very, very cynical about their life, about our reality, about spirituality in general. It can leave people feeling very disempowered, very depressed. Yeah, it's like
confused.
Oh, well, I guess, either they disbelieve it, or even worse, and this is what I see a lot of the time, is people continue to believe in that idea of manifestation, but they weaponize it against themselves, and they just say, well, I'm not vibrating to what I want. there's something wrong with me.
Yes.
I'm not attracting the life I want because I'm broken. So they stick with believing in the system.
Well,
and
I have
then
another
beat
question.
themselves up.
Because somebody there's also always something to discover about yourself. There's always something to witness about yourself, about your mind. So even in like who's to blame, there's something there that you can go deeper in. Like some people like to blame systems, outside sources. And surely that's easy to do because there's lots of oppressive systems. Lots. But then other people turn it inwards and they feel like it's their fault. And so there is potentially some reasons why that occurs too, why that dynamic occurs within someone, when someone externalizes or internalizes. And that's another thing, you know, that you can witness your mind doing. Yeah. What your mind does with failure or perceived failure when it's trying to lead.
Yes, that's your particular pattern.
So even in pattern. What happens in your experience with like manifestation and like trying to get security and comfort and everything in your life that of course you deserve, like how you even interpret the outcome, you know, that's your mind too. So it's interesting. There is a lot that you can gather from this whole way that a lot of us have been, and I think you did touch on it, that it's very much more seven-centered. It's very much more arising in the mind.
Okay, well, so let's unpack that a little bit, because we've talked about this before on the show, but the idea in human design is that we lived for thousands of years as 7 chakra beings. And when we were living for thousands of years as 7 chakra beings, we were led by the mind. And that was correct. That was right for us as a species. To have minds that were strategically sorting things out and moving us forward as a species, building civilization. And then, when was the shift? When did we shift away from being 7 chakra beings? It's okay if you don't know off the top of your head.
Yeah.
But so there was a point in history, we'll come back to that, but there was a point in history when we stopped being 7 chakra beings and became 9-centered beings. But this transition wasn't clear to us. It wasn't known to us. It was just an unfolding of nature that happened. And so the momentum of the old 7-centered way of using the mind to lead continued even as we became this 9 chakra species. And so that's sort of...
Yes, in 1781 when projectors came.
Right. So in 1781, we ended this era of 7 chakra'd human beings, moved into this era of being 9 chakra'd beings, but one of the more, I guess, pointed shifts that occurred there is we stopped being a species that was led by the mind and started being a species that was led by the body. And so when we say this old idea of manifestation is very 7-centered, that's really what we're talking about. It's going back to humans pre-1781.
It's a Saturnian body. Basically, that's sort of one thing to remember is that in 1781, around the time of the discovery of Uranus, that humans became aware of Uranus, is when we shifted into a more Uranian body, which you will notice, like, our lifespan generally is like around the cycle of a Uranian cycle.
This was the discovery of Uranus. It coincides, is what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so the discovery of Uranus, like, expanded us further into our own
Yeah, it was a
construct.
Shift from the 7 to 9 center. Whereas previously, as 7-centered beings, that's more Saturnian bodied.
Okay, so Saturnian to Uranian. Okay, and so arguably then, the concepts of manifestation that are still currently being utilized in New Age and spiritual communities would have worked 1781. Like, it would have worked in that Saturnian age, potentially, that actually really would have
Yes.
functioned. You would have built the life that you wanted in that way.
Well, I mean, think of it this way. Many people are familiar with like the idea of ancestral healing and carrying the wounds and things of your ancestors. Well, this is basically that. We so deeply became mental in our seven-centered ways that we still carry this sort of illusion that we are that. And
well,
it wasn't until like the human design information that people can now like awaken to the fact that they are in a nine-centered vehicle.
Yeah. Slow awakening.
And so that just changes everything completely. Now the vehicle is in charge, not the mind.
What a huge shift. That's
so
a massive
it's
shift.
Understandable that we would not to be aware of this, because like all of the like ancestral and everything like that is very complex.
Well, their knowledge base was based on this, and it's interesting because you still have this desire to dig up like the old magic, right? The ancient, occulted, hidden magic of these old ages where they knew how reality worked. And if we can dig up like Hermes Trismegistus, like golden nugget of information, and then we can control our life, right? Like there's still that notion that we have to dig up this exciting esoteric knowledge that's been hidden all along, and that was the whole movie The Secret, right? The idea of that movie was that we are able to manifest with our mind, basically. And it was something they were uncovering that had been hidden from us, and like that's very appealing to people. That it's like the secret to living the life you want to live has been hidden from you. And you know what this challenges is that no, it's not hidden in old knowledge. Even though human design does use some of that old knowledge, as a system, again, it's going to the body as the leader. As the driving force in our life path, or as I've said many times in the show, that our life path is our body, or our life path is contained within our body. Okay, so then one of the things that the 9 chakra perspective really challenges is, do we even have any control to manifest? You know, there's something to play with here. So, and this might be really provocative for people. This provokes a lot of people when they find human design, that you have way less choice than you thought because your life path is built into your body, and your body is going to unfold that life path. And the amount of harmony with which it unfolds is probably the most choice that you have, I think.
Well, it can be, because first of all, you have to realize that you didn't realize you were 9-centered, and you thought you were 7-centered. So the whole process of like slowly letting that, like, you might feel it in your cells right away as like a knowing, like most people do. Like most people are like almost like, you know, because really deep down inside, you know, because you are that.
Yeah.
So it's more of like a thing where the mind has to get used to it, and there is like a relationship between the mind and body that has to occur over time, and the passenger becomes more of a witness over time. So there, you know, there's just going to be that sort of slow version of surrender, whatever that looks like for each individual. So in the beginning, yeah, it can be very triggering. I think it's a good thing to be triggered, especially in this way, because I was triggered and I was like, whoa. But at the same time, deep down, like, it was a knowing, you know? But I'm a projector, and many projectors also have that experience with this information because it acknowledges us a lot, because sort of we're the new type. We just sort of arrived in the world in 1781.
Yes.
As well. So this is like really we get really excited at times because we're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And now I understand. And so then there's a process. But the mind is not going to really like it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not my experience. And I know many, many people, it's not the experience. And the further you go, often the more difficult it gets, because the mind isn't going to understand the body. It's certainly not going to understand it at first. It might not ever. Sometimes it will come up with conclusions or like reasons why the body chose that, so that it can feel like it will, trust the body more. Because it can, but there is this process because we haven't been living that way. We have been living by the mind. We've been, obviously sometimes we've been living our design. That's the other thing too. We have to remember that tons of moments in our lives, if you look back, it's, and this is your mind too, but it's reflecting, and you can say, yeah, you know what? I really think I was trusting myself there. But then it's gone the next moment. So, because you don't know, there's no anchor. So you're like, sometimes I'm trusting it, sometimes I'm not. And
because you didn't know what you were doing right or why it was right.
Yeah. So it can be triggering. It can get the mind really flared up and puffed up. Like, puff itself up.
Yeah, because one of the distinctive things that human design does is rip away the mind's ability to make decisions for you. That's the main disempowerment of the mind there, where it's like all of a sudden no longer should you be making decisions based on your mind. You need to be making decisions based on your body. It's upsetting. For sure, because that's the way you've been living.
It's scary.
It can be, absolutely.
You don't know. All these wounds sort of like that were already there under the surface sort of feel like they're bigger and they take up more space, and you're feeling maybe crowded with it because it's like, but over time, what a lot of people experience and what I've been experiencing as well in my process now over 2 years is that you actually like not having a choice. Like you actually relax more because there's not just endless possibilities now for you to like scan and, go over, like, especially if you have like an open head and an open ajna, like all these inspirations, all these things. And now you can kind of like go, oh, this is a kind of a relief. Like, after 2 years of sometimes very intense, dark times and not wanting to trust and wondering, is this correct or not? But then deciding to trust, because that's the mind going, are you sure you can trust it? Are you sure? And I'm going, well, shouldn't I try first? Because the mind hasn't been working. Yeah. So that's the other fucking shit, It's like the mind keeps telling me all these little stories about how it can do so good for me, how it can do like, oh, I can strategize the best for you, like the best solution to this issue, the best direction, the best choice. I could do that for you. But if I listen to the mind and it messes up and I end up suffering and I end up depleted or whatever, well, what happens? And I go, okay, how many times do I let the mind go like that? And I don't let my body even try one time?
Well, it's inconsistent. Because here's the thing. Sometimes the mind's plan does work out, which can trick people too. Right? Like, we have this... It's a tricky situation. Because you do have people who are trying that old manifestation way. And things pan out. Mm-hmm. So they assume that it worked. Mm-hmm. Right?
Well, I would say to that person... I guess coming to a conclusion about knowing if for sure that was it or not, it's really hard to ever know.
Yeah.
If that was, totally correct or not. You might have an internal knowing, but in the end, you really don't know. You never know. Because what if you were meant to struggle in that moment for empowerment purposes? What if you're meant, and so like every single thing that's occurring, your mind might try to take power back by convincing you that it wasn't good or it was good.
Or that it arrived as a result of your mind.
That's right.
This
and
idea
so that the mind takes
credit.
It takes for something. So it's just something to watch. Obviously, it's not something to get, like, we're not here to try to make it more complicated, but, like, really, like, as much as you can, like, observing that process. And so even in manifestation, my constant question is, where is this coming from? Is this important right now? I would go through, am I trying to prove myself? I would go through some of my like not self areas and wonder like,
well, the mind is just so cunning, and I think this is something to come to terms with, because it will reassert itself a billion times in a circumstance like that, where it has the opportunity to say, see, look, I was right. I got you what you needed. I'm the one to lead you. And you'll in that moment forget about all the times your mind horribly misled you and brought you to total chaos. So I think coming to terms with how cunning the mind is and how capable it is of looping back on itself to keep tricking you again and again and to keep telling you that it's the one in control, or it will even pretend to be the body. It will pretend that, oh yeah, I'm getting this from the body, because your mind is deeply connected to your body. It can really, really mislead you deeply.
Think of it as an addiction in a way, and you're kind of scared because you don't know anything else. And this is the other thing to remember. Everything you've relied on in your life is not you, and everything that you haven't relied on is just sitting there waiting for you to rely on it.
Okay, so then let's get into because there's two areas of human design where I think a lot of people latch on with this idea of manifestation. Okay, and I think these should be cleared up.
Yes.
Number one, there's the actual term manifestor. So you have people in human design who are, their auras are identified as a manifestor type. And a lot of people, they take that old seven-centered, mind-based notion of manifestation, and they just project it onto the human design term being a manifestor or a manifesting generator. So let's clear that up and just talk about the extent to which, first of all, only some people on Earth are manifestors. Only some people on Earth have that aura. Do you remember off the top of your head?
9% of the population.
So there's a small portion of the population, they have auras that operate as manifestors. But does that mean that they're the only ones that can attract a beautiful life for themselves using a vision board and watching The
if
Secret?
Anything, that's generator more than anything.
We'll get into that. We'll get into that because that's my second thing that I want to get to is the idea of an aura that actually does attract.
Nobody can make mental decisions, but
manifestor in human design terms.
So it relates to the throat. So in human design, the area of manifestation is our throat center. Because in the end, the throat is actually an incredible deep dive on its own.
Yeah.
Because it's even when you look at genetics and the way that the fetus is formed and the way that the throat center develops in fetal development and all the centers are formed, right, when we're in our mother's womb. Anyway, but on a very simple level, everything ends at the throat in the body graph. Whether you have it open, undefined, whatever. Just when you're looking at a blank body graph, of a blank human being, the way that everything sort of culminates is at the throat for expression. Because this is the meaning of our existence as human beings. We are here to express, no matter what your definition is and gates and all the uniqueness. It's just how you express uniquely.
It's like the fountain.
But it's what we need to do. It's so much a part of our evolution and how we're expanding and how we're even transforming the solar plexus. It's so incredible. And so you can find out all about your unique voice through looking at your unique blueprint. But all of us are here to express uniquely. It's just,
You're talking about the flow, just the flow of energy within the body and how it culminates.
That's part of our existence, part of our human evolution. Yeah. But what basically that area is a manifestation source. So, with the way that you express. So someone who has a center that is considered a motor in human design, so it has this energy that is connected, they have a channel that is connected to the throat from a motor. So that gives them what they call manifestation capabilities.
Okay.
It really means that they can take action. So the other piece to the expression piece of the throat is the ability to take action on a physical level.
To initiate,
yeah. So it's, when you think of the throat, you wouldn't think of someone getting up and moving around, but that's one of the things that you notice with a manifesting generator or someone who has even an open throat who feels pressure to act. We've seen that before with our kid, with our one kid, Asher, who has an open throat, he might get a response and then boom, he's acting on it right away. He's not a manifesting generator. He's not a manifestor. He doesn't have, a direct access. There's no connection to the throat there. And so sometimes, you'll feel pressure to act. It doesn't mean even for a manifestor it's right to act every time either. Everyone has their own authority, but they have the energy and the capability to take action.
There's life force energy.
There's life force energy to take action.
Right.
Because there's a channel to the throat.
So they emit
initiate
from that place.
Yes.
Whereas someone like Asher, who has an open throat, they receive from that place.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not here to initiate from the throat into the world.
No.
They're
much more like invited.
Right.
To speak and take action.
Okay.
Right? Whereas if the manifesting generator or the manifestor using their strategy and authority can take action in that way.
So manifestors are initiators.
Yes.
Right? It's even
That's
just
right.
like another word. Like their aura type is an initiating
others.
aura type.
Yeah.
Right.
They initiate. They're very creative beings, deeply, deeply creative because of these abilities to initiate. Mm-hmm. And so they do, obviously we're talking about manifestors. They don't have sacral energy. So they do have to follow like their strategy and authority, of informing and, informing so that they understand their impact, because manifestors make impact with their initiations, their creative initiations. So it has nothing to do with the old manifestor.
It has nothing to do with it. It's completely different.
I think the thing in human design too is to just really is a lot of what we call deconditioning.
Yeah.
And a lot of it includes learning new terminology and slowly
and
understanding.
Go of old terminology.
Yeah, and just letting it go. Like free yourself. Free yourself.
Okay, so then let's get into the other thing that you brought up that I was thinking about, that in human design, if someone is a generator, they have a magnetic aura. They have an aura that attracts life to them, right? And this, again, this touches on that old idea of manifestation, the law of attraction, right? Mm-hmm. That you need to use the law of attraction. You need to attract to you the life that you want, the life that you feel you're supposed to have. So then let's unpack here the difference between this idea that the majority of the planet, because most people on Earth are generators, that the majority of humans on this planet have magnetic auras. They have auras that pull life to them. How is that not manifestation in this old way of thinking?
Because it doesn't involve acting or doing. Generators don't have a connection to the throat. If they did, they'd be a manifesting generator. And manifesting generators are generators with a caveat of sometimes being able to initiate depending on their strategy and authority.
Yeah.
Which would be sacral or emotional. So
when we're talking about this magnetic aura that most people on Earth have, it's like breathing, right? In that this is something that is just happening. It's not something that your mind can control. You cannot alter what or the extent to which your aura is pulling life to you. No. But it is happening.
Constantly.
And what does this mean to people? Like, what's the difference between someone who has an aura that attracts and someone who does not? Why is this even notable? What does it mean for people? Because
it means you're very different and unique, and you may not have had any idea, and you most likely have not been acting like yourself. So generators have a huge, huge problem with taking action and initiating because they're afraid to wait. They're afraid that life won't come to them, so they go out there and they get it.
So one of the main things, and I'm a manifesting generator, so this is really one of the things I'm working with, because I have a generator aura. And so this idea then is that there needs to be an immense amount of patience in the majority of the human population where they learn to wait for life to come to them so they can respond to it according to their life path, right? In a way that is harmonious with the life path that their body already is programmed to.
Yeah, everyone has to wait. Manifestor has to wait too. They have to wait for the creative inspiration to initiate, and then they will inform before they do.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to answer to anyone. They can do whatever they want in terms of their delivery, but they have to inform to make sure that the impact is, known. But they have to wait too. They don't have consistent energy.
Yes, I recognize there is a form of
So every
waiting.
human being has to wait.
Yes,
this is the one big lesson too. Like, if overarching thing, like, no one's better or worse. Like, you might feel like it's hard for you, and no doubt, like, I understand, it's hard, very hard, to trust. But everyone has to wait. So that, in and of itself, is, something just to start practicing, I think, if you want to explore this. Anyway, if you feel called to just, or observe yourself and see if it at all feels like something you want to try, maybe like a lot of people have, said to me before, like, oh my God, I've been constantly initiating. Like, I know I have, like, I was afraid.
Well, finding out your aura type is a good first step. So, people, grabbing your birth time and your birthplace and going and finding out your aura type, and then looking into what kind of weighting is suited to you, to your aura type, then starting the experiment. Because it's free. It's free to go get your aura type, right? This is not a service.
You can go to Jovian Archive, and there's a few different sites.
Jovian Archive, My Genetic Matrix.
My Body Graph.
My Body Graph, yeah.
But the other thing that, I think is interesting to note as well is that, we notice that all the ways that we've all been acting our whole life that was sort of not aligned with our aura type is fear-driven. Mm-hmm. And so this is the other thing to note about the 7-centered programming and the mind. It was fear-based stuff back then. It was like fear-based strategizing and like
the mind responding to fear.
Yeah.
What was a natural way of living.
And so, but now we don't need to make fear-based action decisions. We don't need to make fear-based decisions. So if you notice, like, when a generator takes action, it's usually driven by fear. Fear of waiting for life, because you feel like you're never gonna have something come to you. You're never going to have that, so you go out. A projector is so afraid they're not going to be recognized or invited, so they keep inviting everyone. And they keep going out there and they're recognizing everyone with very little recognition in return, or aligned recognition, because you're afraid that it's just not going to happen unless you do it, So you can see, like, even in the not self, what we call the mind in human design, when it's kind of trying to be something it's not, it takes up space in areas where it tries to say, yes, you have this, when you don't. So, yes, you have a connection to the throat, but it's fear-based. So it puts fear in your openness, and it tries to, Well,
so there's a fundamental fear here that we're really addressing, which is fear that we are not in control. And that we need to get control. That's really what all this is, especially if we're dealing with this old 7-centered or 7-chakrad concept of manifestation. It's like, I'm in control.
Yeah.
I'm in
full
is the mind,
control. Which is the personality.
Yeah. Yeah. And what would it mean to not be in control? It's a big thing for people to let go of.
It's massive, right? Which is why it really, truly takes years.
Yeah.
It really does. To shift everything all the way down to the cells. Because first you get your mind on board to a certain extent, and you're like, oh yeah. And then you start to go through these like real deconditioning problems where you'll face your deepest fears, which you can see, oh my God, yeah, I'm so deeply afraid. Now I'm afraid of even being recognized because I don't know what that's like, because I've never been my type.
I'll speak to that myself. One of the things that is freaky moving into this understanding that your life path is already unfolding within your body and that's not something you're choosing, is that if you look back over your life and you see these patterns, and then it's like, am I going to have to deal with these things, these patterns my whole life now? Those things are never going to go away. Mm-hmm. Those patterns, like That particular struggle is never fucking going away. That's my whole goddamn life now. And that's like really, that's really hard to accept to a great extent because, you know, you may have reasons you're here, particular lessons you're here that are very, very difficult, challenging lessons. I'm sure you can relate to this, where it's like you have to come to terms with the battle you came here for. And perhaps you've been avoiding what is your battle or assuming that your battle, whatever it is just going to end any day now. If I just get control of my life, the battle that I've been waging will just go away. But
that's
really,
totally undefined Ajna right now. It's like, if I just figured it out right now, if I just
right.
got it right now, I'd be good. And then like, but once you know, you're like, oh my gosh, that's my mind and my openness trying to act like it has something there so that I feel like I'm whole.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. But I don't want that.
But there's an acceptance. Like, I think one of the things that I feel is very important to communicate for people who are new to this information is, like, where is the empowerment, right? Because this is a big reason why all those old teachings were very sexy, very marketable. You know, it was like, you are going to be so empowered. You're going to manifest the life you want. You're a god. You're a god, basically, you know?
I know, and it's true,
very appealing.
But...
To an extent it is. But no, so here's the thing. Where is the empowerment in... I think, and I'm just going to start by answering my own question. I think the first major step in empowerment is truly knowing who and what we are. Even if that's painful, it can be empowering at the same time, right? Where it's landing in deeper self-knowledge, even though that's painful at first because it means, oh shit, I'm going to have to struggle this way that I've struggled for the rest of my life to a certain extent. It doesn't mean like exactly in the same way, but there are some lessons that are just always going to be there for us. You know?
True, but the mind is trying to determine what it knows.
Yeah.
The mind is trying to come to a conclusion about how it's going to look.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. Like, there really isn't anything wrong. And, like, that's another seven-centered thing about, like, stopping the mind from, like, you know, like, clear your mind. And there's, like, nothing going on. And it's like, well, that might not be possible for some people. Mm-hmm. That's not really the goal here, is to, like, stop the mind from its job. The mind is amazing. We developed a mind for a reason. It's not trash. Mm-hmm. You know, it's actually very useful. It's a great outer authority. We can actually calculate.
For helping others. That's like, it's a main tool.
Or even internally when we're looking at pros and cons of things, when we're assessing, when we're analyzing, when we're studying.
Yeah.
When I'm studying human design, obviously I'm using my mind.
But not for decision making.
Yes. When I'm talking to you right now, I'm using my mind.
Yeah.
But I'm not making a health choice or a life path choice with my mind. So it's like, you know, I don't want to talk too much shit about the mind, but the mind does need to be put in its place.
It does.
It's been reckless.
So to give respect to some of those old teachings, you know, you see that the ancient symbol, the Chinese lion that has its paw over the smaller lion. Mm-hmm. And those are the teachings of, like, you put the mind in its place.
Yes.
Where it properly belongs.
Yes.
Not as an authority. So even those old, like, Buddhist teachings and stuff, they did have that down and on point. And again, which is why I think human design took a lot of these old teachings and synergized them, but just from the perspective of, you got 9 chakras.
Yeah, these are, you know, like with the I Ching, like, it's a huge basis in human design, like studying. And it's funny because I studied the I Ching and felt very attracted to it for many, many, many years. And same with astrology, like very deeply studied astrology since I've been a teen and all of these different esoterics. But all of those individually on their own were all derived in 7-centered times. So with the new information added to those teachings and sort of synergized with those teachings, it's become something completely new.
It uplifts all that old
It's
stuff.
Just new.
Yeah.
Which is why I like it.
Yeah.
Because it's, you know, it has a little flavor from all those other areas, you know, so it's not wrong. They're not wrong. But this is like a dimension a level of understanding that I'm assuming we're ready for now because it's here in the world more.
Well, I think that the idea of the quietude within the mind, or being able to cultivate internal silence, I think one of the most beneficial things that is still there from that is that it does put the mind in its place. Even if you're never going to achieve that internal silence, a lot of the practices that lead you down that path do explain, hey, your internal dialogue, that's not really a good decision-making system. That's not really something to rely upon. Like, our internal dialogue can go anywhere.
I think this is something else I want to bring up because I've seen it still existing, is that what you think about can become manifest. Like, it can manifest in the world. And to me, that just doesn't, it's never worked. Like, it's never been true for me in my experience. Like, I've definitely played with that many years ago, and I thought, what I think about doesn't become real. Like, what if I have deep, deep traumatic fears? That's not, so I stuff them away and not think about it? Like, it's, so what I see in the realm of manifestation with people, it's like, there's like this sort of thing where it's like, only think these sort of positive thoughts about yourself.
Yes.
Because if you allow fear to creep in to your dreams and your visions, then that will become the reality. Yeah. So it's like, no, like, actually, that's another weird one that I've noticed.
Yes.
I don't know what to say much more than that I don't think that that's healthy. Nor do I think that is anywhere near the truth.
Your negative vibes are not 5D.
Like, I mean, I can't say what's true for everyone, of course, but this seems very disempowering and possibly very dangerous.
Well, here's the thing, is that, like, to an extent, when you become a more positive person, a lot of your life could change beautifully. That is really beautiful and true. However, you're not magnetizing a nightmare to you if you have dark thoughts. Also true, And I think people a lot of people have been tricked by the fact that their mind happened to align with their life path. Mm-hmm. When it worked to them, right? Where it was like, I became a more positive thinker and my life turned around. So clearly my thoughts turned my life around, right? Mm-hmm. This idea is like, positive thinking changed my life. And so they equate one with the other. Where it's like, okay, but what if your positive thinking just aligned you more with your existing life path with which you had no choice? You didn't have a choice. You just lined up with the path that was already built inside of you. Mm-hmm. And sure, that will feel very good, actually.
Well, the thing that this sort of like circles back for me is that words are some of the greatest tools that we have. So by no means, like, and this comes back to the throat in human design, like, the words we use, how we express is how we evolve each other. Like, we need each other sort of externally doing those things. But internally, the way that we talk to ourselves, of course it matters. Of course it matters. The mind can get you doing, and the not self can get you doing awful things internally. But again, I would still say that that's the mind. That's the mind in its shadow states, in your openness, doing some crazy shit and like putting you through these things. But then the other hand is like natural melancholy, and some people are more tuned to the lower sort of vibrational things on earth, not because they're in it, but to observe it and see it and know it.
Okay,
so so there's many, many, many things going on to look at for each individual. Like, none of this is going to be advice for everybody.
But we've seen this in human design. You can have someone who has more pessimism in their design.
Yeah.
And they're literally here,
and that's normal.
They're literally here to play with that pessimistic worldview, to live it consistently for a whole lifetime. Are they just attracting a negative life? Like, exactly. That's not really realistic. Yeah. And why do we have pessimistic people? Because we need pessimistic people in the world. Yes. They serve a purpose, right?
A great purpose.
And so someone who is they have lived their lives always from that perspective, right? They go to pessimism again and again just because it's in their life path, it's in their design, and then they come up against these new age things that say, you have a destructive mind, you have a destructive worldview, you're ruining,
You're always thinking of the negative.
You're always thinking of the negative. And so that that's a really, really tricky thing to introduce people to, I would say. You have to be able to really let go of a lot to understand that there are people here who need to be pessimistic from birth to death.
We need them.
Yes.
Flip it around and be
Sure,
I need that person to be pessimistic, because what that person brings when they're allowed to be who they are, which is pessimistic, and notice what's wrong and notice what needs to be corrected and notice like the flaws and want to make it better, and like that helps us.
Yeah.
That helps the collective, you know, like nothing is going to happen if we're all just positive in our minds all the time. Nothing would happen. Like it would actually be boring and we might stagnate as a race.
Yeah.
Like it just, so that's actually topic for another time. All the benefits of all the different views and, ways of being that people offer up, like same with struggle. It's, people might be like, why do you have to struggle all the time? And sure, there might be times when someone who has the channel of struggle struggles sort of quote unquote needlessly, but nobody will ever know what is correct because it's for empowerment, right? You struggle to be empowered. And so, that's for that passenger in that person's vehicle to witness and to say, yeah, oh man, I struggled there. That was probably not great. What happened here? What happened here? But the struggle in and of itself, is a triggering thing. People are triggered by the word struggle. They're like, I don't want to fucking struggle. Like, you're already struggling. That's my thing is like, anyone who's like, do I have to struggle? I'm like, but you're struggling now.
If you're alive on Earth right now, you're struggling.
Yeah,
for
like
sure.
In some way you're struggling.
Yeah, no one is chilling in a plateau right now.
But also, I carry the channel struggle, and I deeply feel that they're like, we have to all struggle. Birth is a struggle. Yeah. Babies don't come out with ease. Just chilling. It's a struggle for them and for the mom. And for it's a struggle to be born.
Well, and think of it too, it's like, okay, at some point, a child is developing. At some point, they develop an internal dialogue. Okay, at some point that happens. At some point, their mind kicks into gear. They start thinking. They start the mind running and processing reality in that way. If this old concept of manifestation was true, children would just start, when that kicked in, they would just start pulling weird ass things. Their life would start to shift. It would get like crazy. They would start like manifesting all the weird shit that kids think about. You know what I mean? They would just like suddenly have ice cream and candy everywhere because they have very pure minds.
Yes.
They're very pure. They're very bright, right? So why isn't that happening to children?
You don't get it until adulthood?
Yeah, like they're just surrounded by toys and candy as soon as they develop a mind. No, but why? Why doesn't the law of attraction kick in and turn everything into an amusement park? For no reason. Mm-hmm. Well, of course, because that is not how reality functions, right?
Yeah.
But it sort of was how reality functioned. In some way or another, things were occurring that way. We can't know what it was like because we weren't alive in 1780.
The year before.
The last year where humanity was being
or for the thousands of years.
Or the thousands of years before. And this is interesting too when you look back on let's say the ancient civilization of Atlantis, right? They're like trying to find the ancient Atlantean knowledge, and the ancient Atlantean wisdom and technology. But again, if what we're talking about is really true, if these ages of humanity are really true, then the Atlanteans were mental people. They were people living from the mind. They were living like using fear-based strategies from the mind to construct a civilization and do what they did. Great. But we are not that species anymore.
No.
That's not who we are.
We're not.
And so we'll never mimic that. We are actually biologically incapable of living the way the Atlanteans lived.
Yeah.
Because they were a different species of human.
Yeah. We can probably, tap some of their knowledge and stuff and, whatever. But, because it's not to scrap everything. It's just to know that you're not that. That's not you anymore. You're a new species.
But again,
we're humans in transitus. We're not. The next species will be brave. And so, we've gone through many different changes, like, in our evolution as Homo sapiens, and,
Well, arguably, we had less chakras before that, right? There was
yeah, the cavemen,
the cavemen
people,
or whatever. I know there's
the
lots of arguments about true history in that regard, but there were still, I think,
five-centered.
five-centered, five-chakred human beings living.
Because the animal kingdom is five-centered. So, like, back then when we were more animalistic, we were, like, splenic, right? We were splenic associated. We didn't have ajnas then.
So
there was no mental stuff. It was pure
survival in
survival instinct,
Yeah.
know? So when we talk about the awareness centers, you're going spleen is the oldest awareness center, right? Like, was there in the beginning. And then all of a sudden, as cave people, we go we developed the ajna, and then we turned into seven-centered beings. Well, obviously two developed, but ajna was one that formed.
So we got our third eye, and that expanded us.
That's when they, the Hindu Brahmins discovered 7 chakras. Was when the ajna was formed, because their mental states changed, right? So now they could understand, oh, we have 7 chakras, boom. There's this awareness.
Yeah.
That's not instinctual. Because instinctual awareness isn't going to be like, oh, we have 7 chakras. Instinctual awareness doesn't give a shit about that.
Yeah, the ability to conceptualize and reflect.
That's the ajna. So it's like, yes, thank you for gifting us, like, thank you for the caveman's evolution to gifting us this ajna. Now, watch what really happened after that. Yeah, things got mental. For sure. And so, anyway, there's a lot. I'm going on around.
No, it's really actually, I had never thought about it that way, that one of the reasons that the Brahmins and those Eastern teachings were promoting the 7 chakra teachings was because it was new.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this is
the ability to conceptualize.
I mean, they were promoting the discovery of who humanity had become. Maybe they didn't see it in that context. They may not have realized that, oh, we just recently became a 7-chakred species. We just all started being born with third eyes. They might not have had that context, I would say. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting in retrospect now to understand that, okay, there came this time when humanity birthed third eyes. All of a sudden, humanity had third eyes, and we became this species living from the mind, using these fear-based strategies to build a civilization and to grow and grow and grow. And then 1781 hits. All of a sudden, we now have 9 chakras. We have projectors on the planet who are like a totally new kind of aura. And now we're in this point in history when we're scrambling to figure out who and what we are. And there's a desire to dig it up from the past. And there's a desire to expose the fact that our true nature has been hidden from us. And there is truth to that. Like, there's truth to the fact that our nature and our power as human beings has been hidden from us. But the trick, I think, with this old school manifestation notion is that what's been hidden from you is that your mind can control your whole life. And that's bullshit.
Yeah.
You should not be using your mind to manipulate your life, because you can't, because it's futile. And if you really were honest with yourself and looked back on all the times that your mind failed you horribly, truly honest, like really reflect on the times when your mind said, this is the way to go, and it was a shit show, and it was horrible, and it was the wrong decision in terms of, achieving what you wanted to achieve, or feeling like you understand yourself and your life more clearly. To me, it's easy. The track record is easy to look back on. It's easy to look back on and be like, my mind's track record is shit for decision making.
Yeah. So now, like, for me, at this point, when my mind comes in, I kind of have a conversation and say, well, you weren't really right last time, even though you feel certain now.
Yes.
You are certain, and I have an open ajna, so, that happens a lot. Get a lot of that inside, where it's like, oh, if you do this, I am certain I can figure it out for you. So now I just say, you know what? It's very powerful, though. Like, it's very strong. And so, and also just be okay making mental decisions for a while, too. You have to be okay with that. as much as we're talking about the ideal right now.
Ideals. Oh, yeah.
We're talking about the ideal. This is a process, and you have to be okay still making mental decisions for a while.
Or even go back to it on purpose. I did this the other day.
On purpose, yeah.
I did this the other day. So in my design, it's incorrect for me to be making spontaneous decisions. I am an emotional authority, and so my decision-making is spread out through time through these emotional waves, right? The experience of decision-making is spread out through the experience of an emotional wave, and the meaning of that emotional wave comes as it completes, and then that gives me the capacity to make decisions. But the notion that I can't be making spontaneous decisions, that's totally wrong for me, is something that it did become very clear for me. I was like, huh. But for a day, the other day, literally a couple days ago, I was like, I'm just going to be more spontaneous today and just see what it's like. See if this is true. I'm going to test it. And I got to be really honest. It made my day so much shittier. It made me feel shittier.
Right.
It made my mind and my body feel shittier.
Right.
Like everything was more difficult. Everything was just like more unclear. My day had less of a sense of like clarity and purpose. Like it was kind of toxic. But I needed to do that. I needed for a day and be like, nope, I'm going to give into the spontaneity and just see what it does in my day. From the beginning of my day, I was like, right away.
Do an experiment.
And this is one of the fundamental sort of tenets of human design, is that you just experiment with it. You believe nothing. You believe none of the information. You don't believe any of it. You get really raw with experimenting it.
If you're at all curious, if you at all feel like it's something you want to even just like look at.
Yeah.
You're going to gather all this mental knowledge, but then you're going to have to test it.
Yeah.
This is 9-centered information, which means it's receptive and it's not going to be strategic.
Yeah, you can't strategically use the mind.
No. We moved into being more receptive beings.
Yeah.
We like to think we're strategic, but that's the mind. That's the mind. That's
so
not actually
us. So we went
us.
from strategic to receptive. What do you mean when you say that?
Well, just in terms of, now, of course, like everyone has their own unique design. Some people are more receptive than others. That's a whole thing. But generally speaking, as 7-centered beings, you're strategic beings. As 9-centered beings, you're more receptive beings. So, the mind is the strategy. It's the strategizing, function. Part of the mechanism of who you are is your strategizing. And that's fine. You let that strategizing go, and that becomes, when it's in alignment, when your whole self is getting more in alignment than your outer authority, you'll start to see all of these things fall into place. So your strategizing has a place. But it's not its current place.
Yeah, no, I can say that as an emotional authority. This is a discovery I recently made, that I do need to have a strategy for my day. Right? Because I'm not designed to make spontaneous decisions, I do have to have like a strategy for my day, a set of goals. Where it's like, then when I have those moments when my not self is like, hey, do this spontaneous thing with your energy. You have a little burst of energy, of creativity, just do, check social media or whatever it is. I go back to, what are my goals for today? Because I'm not changing my plan, out of spontaneity. The only reason I would change my plan is if I experienced some kind of emotional wave or something like that, where at the end of it I arrived upon, oh, okay, yeah, my day does need to change. I need to alter my plans here and here and here. So
yeah, and that's interesting too for you because you have a defined spleen, so you're gonna get in the moment splenic awarenesses.
Yeah.
So you will have that, but you can't act on that.
It's not decision making.
It's gathering information. So it's like in the now, this, in the now, this, and you just put it away. And if that applies to the sort of wave, your emotional wave to feel clarity, then you have all those things. But of course they're at odds. The spleen and the solar plexus are just so opposite in terms of awareness centers. One's right now, one's over time. And so even the ajna is over time, It's not in the now information. It's conceptualizing. So the only in the now is the spleen.
Yeah, which is what the caveman
And of course, if you have a sacral response, that's an in the now response. But it's not an in the now, I'm going to take action right away. if you're a generator, if you have a response like right now, you're not necessarily going to just go, okay, well now I'm going to act on that response.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe for a manifesting generator, but you still have emotional authority, so you're not going to act spontaneously.
Never. No, it's a
Right?
never thing. It's a
So
never thing.
with the three of those things defined, you have the sacral, so you have the response, you have a sacral response, you might have the spleens, like in the moment awareness, and then the decision is made after emotional clarity is had.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I'm getting hungry.
Yeah.
I have to.
Well, that's true. Your cognition is going to shut down. Well, I think like to button it, I think the invitation is go check out your design. If you don't have your aura type, go look at it, see what your authority is, and start to look at the possibility that you have 9 chakras, and that a lot of the old 7-centered teachings have been confusing or misleading or not really been serving you in the way that you believe they should, you know. And I think that there's something very, very empowering about having your own authority, an authority that is unique to you, you know, absolutely unique to you, because we're so hyper unique. And
kind
this is
of
what
a huge responsibility.
Yes, because it's
Yeah.
it is and it isn't, because at the same time, like you said, to a certain extent, there's a relaxation that I'm not really controlling my whole life path. There is a relaxing into that.
Yes, there is. I just mean the responsibility of completely owning everything yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Outside of systems, outside of the idea of manifestation, outside of other people in the world and all of that, it's like, it's you.
Yeah.
You have to rely only on you. Now, of course, we go to all kinds of people to get their outer authority, because there's lots. We cannot really truly live on our own. We need the outer authorities of others. We need the support. When you really fully understand this at the depth of what it is on a genetic level, we are not individuals on our own just walking around, although individuality is the future.
We're interwoven with everyone.
You know, our individual authority is the future, but we need everyone to be being their own unique self. Like, nobody comes with a full body graph, all colored in. Mm-hmm. We all have openness, and those things, like, those are genetic ways of us, like, connecting and expanding and evolving our race.
Yeah.
On genetic levels. So, you know, you can manifest all kinds of things that, like, are right for you and support you, but I guess I just stopped using that word now because of the old sort of definition and way it was being used.
Just promoting the mind. You don't want to promote the mind.
You're not limited.
Yeah.
In terms of the body graph, because everyone comes with all of the gates and channels possibility.
Mm.
Right? But it involves others and transits and all of these things that evolve over life for us to have experiences of all of those areas. So the way that you, like, manifest or show up in the world is just not going to be most likely the way that you have been trying to
that your mind has been trying.
Yeah.
Let's be real. That's not really you. Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, great. Well,
yeah.
And I think people would do well to follow your Instagram if they really want to go deep into any of the human design stuff, because you're daily grinding in that way, and you're, you know, offering services to help people go deeper into their body graph if it feels right.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm doing some coaching and sort of just more so, like, wherever you're at in your process, and you need guidance because there's a lot to go through life alone, and then sort of understanding, you know, how you work and function, and
what you are,
like, who you really are.
What you really are. Yeah, no, there's a lot there. There's a lot there.
And the deconditioning process can be very lonely and challenging and depressing, and not to deter anyone. Yeah. But I'm going to be real. I think, you know, things don't really change. Like, when you have a habit that you want to change, you know, some people are like, I can't stop eating greasy burgers, and that's hard. So I'm going, well, then why wouldn't like changing the way you operate be difficult too?
Yeah.
You know, if you
That's a
can't
total
stop
inversion.
doing one habit with like your diet, for example, or your lifestyle, then why would this be just a smooth ride? And so that's why I'm here.
But you can
I'm
make
here
the
for
ride
the guidance.
smoother.
Yeah, like I'm here
Yeah.
to sort of guide and but I can really only like when I'm in a one-on-one thing, that's when things happen.
Yeah.
As well. So
well, humanly
Yeah.
designed on Instagram. And please share the podcast, support our show, go to our websites, purchase oils and products, and help us keep doing what we are doing. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you.